This is another episode in another series on this channel. Here in this series, we are going to talk about the ancient history because ancient history is something that is not very easy to determine. Okay, due to pretty much obvious reasons because ancient history does not exactly have documents. Okay, we have well written documented evidences for contemporary history. Even for medieval history, there after destruction of few of our libraries, there are other resources that have survived. But for ancient history, all we can depend upon is some of the claims, some of the assertions that have been well researched by the white person post 1922 after the discovery of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, and we are supposed to believe those things. Okay, so there are two parallel narratives. One of them is based on the native knowledge, other one is based on the Western knowledge. Okay, so let me put it to you this way. Okay, I'm going to put forth in front of you two different narratives, and you can decide, on your own which one is more convincing to you. Okay, number one is nobody came from outside. The people who had started the Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, and all the other civilizations, these two have been, publicized a lot because this is where it was excavated for the first time, and a large number of artifacts have survived. Okay, the ancient civilizations as far down south as some place in Maharashtra, some places in Gujarat, and as far as UP have been unearthed. Okay, so we are nobody to claim that such civilizations did not exist beyond what has been discovered so far. Okay, it is well beyond our realm of knowledge to claim that only these civilizations existed, and prior to this there were no civilizations. And why am I saying plural? It was one compact united civilization that we call as Bharat. Okay, so nobody came from outside. All the indigenous tribes and clans and people over here, they were living in perfect harmony with each other. That is going to be proven correct by the next chapter that we are going to discuss in this book. But that is one. Okay, it was a cow based economy. Whenever human, the Homo sapiens, when they transitioned from hunter gatherer to a civilized community, from hunter gatherer to a civilized person, that is why the word civilization, because they had stumbled upon this idea that instead of moving from place to place and hunting, our chances of survival are large if we settle down at one place. Okay, we can multiply very rapidly, we can live a life of leisure, and we can indulge ourselves in our hobbies such as singing, dancing, art, and culture. Hence the advent of art and culture, because now um, the Homo sapiens, were free of their vagaries of survival. Because when they were hunter gatherers, what did they have to do? They had to constantly be on the move to hunt and then eat, and hence this is how they would survive. But now that they had realized, okay, if we settle down at one place, we will need a steady supply of at least bare minimum nourishment. That is where cow as an animal comes in, because when these people they settle down in larger groups, so they needed at least bare minimum nourishment. That was something that was provided by the cow. Okay, because of her dairy products. All right, now I'm not saying that they did not consume beef. Obviously they did. Okay, the Indus Valley, the people who lived in the Aryan civilization, they obviously consumed beef and all the other meat products such as mutton and pork. Okay, that is not what I am discussing over here, but yes, this is the story. This is the first narrative, that nobody came from outside. They themselves started this civilization of living in a community. It was a cow based economy, meaning now that you are not moving from place to place, you need one steady source of nourishment. That is where cow comes in, that is where her dairy products come in, and hence it was revered and venerated, because it provided them with these opportunities of leisure and convenience, and hence they could explore other things. All right. Parallelly, second narrative that the West wants you to believe and the white scholarship wants you to believe is there were multiple races that came from outside over here, settled, and then began this Aryan civilization. Okay. Now there is a conflict of interest over here. Okay. All these artifacts, such as Aryan and Mohenjo-daro and all those things, they were discovered in 1922 when the British were looking for things to prolong their rule over the colony that was Bharat. Okay, and hence, after excavation of all these artifacts, okay, they came up with these. But they obviously were operating under this confirmation bias that they were a superior race, and hence they were looking for things that would confirm. Okay, so when they discovered these things, when they were theorizing several concepts related to the Aryan settlements and all Mohenjo-daro and Harappa settlements, okay, they were operating under a confirmation bias that they were a superior race, and hence every other narrative that came out was very well crafted to give you an idea that they were a superior race and we were a subjugated race, and hence we need to abide by their narrative. You do not have the freedom to think. Okay, everything good that is everything valuable that has come out of our civilization has necessarily have to come from the West, from the Aryans that came from the Nordic lands. Okay, this is the second. So these are the two narratives: the cow economy and the migration race movement theory. So which one sounds more convincing to you? And hence the further chapters in this book will make sense to you based on those theories. Okay, you can choose any one of them, but there is a reason why they do not want you to choose the theory of cow, that cow economy theory, because you see how deeply embedded this seed of denial of an exclusive nationhood to pagans is. Okay, that was the sole reason why they propagated this theory of different, nobody living here indigenously and different races coming from outside. And hence, on this logic, this is the basis of the logic on which pagans have been denied exclusive nation statehood, because they say that nobody lived on this land, and hence nobody has righteous claims of forming an exclusive nationhood on this land. Different races have come over a period of time over here, hence they have contributed to its growth, and hence everybody can stake claim. Okay, 50-100 years down the line, we'll see Nordic countries staking claim on the nationhood of Bharat. So you understand why this theory was propagated, simply because they did not want an exclusive nation statehood for pagans. All right, so in this book of R.C. Majumdar, chapter number 9 is titled Indus Valley Civilization, obviously because of the river Indus. Okay. Here he says Mohenjo-daro translates to city of the dead. Okay, because there were many burial mounds discovered over here. All right, what happened was, whenever somebody died in the city of Mohenjo-daro, what they did was they would bury that individual and also bury with him or her not special, but the things that belong to them. Meaning, it would aid them in their, travel or migration to the next realm of their birth. Now, I would again appeal to your sense of reason. Have you observed, and in the contemporary world, in the current world, when you go, there are some rituals in our faith, in the pagan faith, when somebody dies, okay, after burning them, there are also certain rituals that we conduct. And in those rituals, there are some ceremonies that involve, like we worship. There are some methods, there are some rituals to worship the things that belong to that specific individual who died. Okay, and it is believed that it is through those worship you let them use those things in their migration to the next birth. Okay, So, after centuries and centuries of perversion, those rituals still continue. Okay. So, first and the foremost thing, obviously, remarkable skill in town planning and sanitation. Okay, this is something that is an element of jealousy, a major jealousy for all the contemporary civilizations of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa is the remarkable skill that they had in town planning and sanitation. People who lived in the cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, they were extremely well versed with the skills of town planning. Okay. Now, what are some logical inferences you can draw from this established fact that indeed they were good at town planning? How can a race be good at town planning? Okay, a logical assumption would be they were good at geometry. They had to have been, otherwise, how would they plan a town so well if they weren't good at geometry? Okay, then next raises the question, if they were good at geometry, okay, a race gets good at something after centuries of trial and error. Okay, this is a well established logical fact. Okay, if a certain race of people are good at something, they have went through centuries of trial and error, and hence they are good at it. Okay, so if the people that populated the Mohenjo-daro and Harappa civilizations, if they were good at geometry, how far before being so good at geometry did they experiment with geometry for them to be so good at that point? Okay, so it's not like one day they will wake up and miraculously they would start being good at geometry. No. Okay, so you'll have to imagine, you'll have to keep that in mind that if somebody is good at something, there is years and years of practice behind that, years and years, and probably centuries. Okay, centuries of trial and error for them to have been so good at something at that point. That is number one. Number two is trigonometry and mathematics. Okay, so for you to be good at geometry, you'll have to be good at trigonometry and mathematics. So again, imagine how far back in time would that have been originated for them to have been good at town planning and all those things at that particular time. Now, people who buy into the theory, the second theory of migration of races, people coming from outside and then settling over here, they would say that no, they already knew, but hence they came from other parts of the world, so they directly started town planning because they already knew geometry, mathematics, and algebra and everything. Another thing, if you are good at town planning, you must also have been good at managing man, material, and resources, because such a degree of town planning and its execution involves a lot of working in unison with the people. Okay, imagine a construction site in these days. How do they work? They all work after after elaborate planning. Okay, this task force has to be doing this task, and you are supposed to do this task at this time. So it was, a considerable degree of synergy and planning that went into it. All right, you cannot just simply say that from one day onwards they miraculously woke up and they were good at all these things. Okay. So R.C. Majumdar mentions in his book on page number 172, the city was entered from the north and south by the first street, which is amply wide for both wheeled and traffic for both wheeled traffic and pedestrians, meaning you could enter the city from both the sides, from north and the south. This again displays their acumen and erudition in town planning. So yes, it was not out of magic. Okay, it was not a fluke that they kept entrances on both the sides. This itself stands testimony to the claim that indeed they were good town planners, because they sat down and planned firsthand and then executed it. It wasn't like they haphazardly started building houses and it turned out to be a well planned town. Okay. So when they set and planned, what sort of skills go into town planning? Drawing, geometry, trigonometry, algebra, resource planning, getting of all these resources. It wasn't like the houses that were built, the seals and houses that were discovered at the sites of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa existed there itself. They were imported from some other place. Okay, so that leads us to believe that when these things were imported, so prior to all those importations, well established logistical networks must have existed. Okay, it's not like one day the people who populated these cities or these civilization, they decided, okay, we need to get these things from a far away places, so now we'll start building roads and we'll start getting stones. No, there has to be centuries of trial and error of logistics as well, and hence there were such fluid logistical channels for them to procure those resources. Okay, so this is what I like to call as appeal to your reason. Whenever you are presented with some fact, okay, try thinking it through the native angle. Do not straight away comply with this narrative that different races came over here, they taught us these sciences of geometry and everything, and hence the people who populated those areas were able to build and execute this amazing and perfect town planning. All right. Now get this, R.C. Majumdar also writes, the roads that were built, they intersected at right angles, dividing the city into square and rectangular blocks. So does not this indicate, advanced knowledge of geometry? Because the roads were intersecting at right angles. So they must have known the idea of right angle. On that assumption, they must have known the ideas of theorem. Okay, something that we today falsely call it as Pythagoras theorem that already existed. Otherwise, they would not have been able to build these blocks. Unless you buy into this theory that Pythagoras somehow traveled to this settlement and taught them what was right angle theorem. Again, this is an appeal to your reason. I'm not asking you to only believe so and so theories. This is something that you should think. Okay. Inside this square or oblong, the area is intersected by a number of narrow lanes crowded with houses. Each lane has a public well, and most of the houses have a private well and a bath. Do you think this is by coincidence? That each lane has a public well. The roads that were constructed, on each road and on each lane there is a public well, meaning for the consumption of water for the common populace. Do you think this is by coincidence that they planned the town so immaculately, but later realized that, oh, now we also need wells, so hence we now need to dig a well over here, and hence on each lane there was a well? No, this was a pre-planned thing. Okay, and on top of that, do you think that they would have dug up wells without knowing that there was water beneath? So they must have possessed this knowledge of determining whether there is groundwater or not. Okay, this is again an appeal to your reason. Nothing happens by coincidence. If you believe in coincidences, then to say the very least, you are ignorant. Okay. So yeah, each lane has a public well. Most of the houses have a private well and a bath. Do you think this is by coincidence? No, it was a very well planned and executed activity. Okay, next up on the same chapter, R.C. Majumdar mentions the city had an elaborate drainage system. How do you think was that possible? How do you think that the city had an elaborate drainage system? So was it after executing town planning that they decided, oh, now we also need a drainage system? So when they actually sat down and planned, they were pretty much aware what would they need. So if that was the level of comprehension and understanding, okay, so just imagine the centuries prior to that trial and error exercise of the centuries prior to that. Okay, race does not get good overnight. There is centuries of evolution and trial and error that goes into getting better. Okay, the city had an elaborate drainage system consisting of horizontal and vertical drains, street drains, soak pits, which is described later on. Okay, there were also street drains, there were horizontal and vertical drains, there were soak pits. Okay, so do you think this was by coincidence? that they started doing these all haphazardly, and by serendipity, that towards the end it turned out to be a well planned town. This is how the chain of questioning works. You need to examine each and every thing that you were taught in school through these lenses. That is how you will eliminate this colonial bias that we already have, inherently have, through at least 7 decades of indoctrination that we have had of this leftist and Marxist scholarship. All right. Next up is, the aim of the Indus Valley was to make life comfortable and luxurious rather than refined and artistic. Okay, this indicates a principle of utilitarianism. If for those of you who don't know, principle of utilitarianism means maximum benefit for the maximum number of people. Okay. So the larger guiding principle of the people who populated these areas, the larger aim was utilitarianism, maximum benefit for maximum people. Now, agreed, there might have been some people who might have been left out from this, developmental works, but that does not. Exceptions do not disapprove the rule. All right. The most remarkable and largest building at Harappa is the Great Granary. Okay, why did they feel the need to store the grains? So there might have been some mechanisms. So even if from your experiences in real life, you might have already learned this, that if you store grains for a larger period of time, it tends to go stale, it spoils. Okay, so if Hadappans, they were making a granary for them to store grains, they might have also evolved mechanisms to keep it safe from going stale. Okay. Now, what might have been the inception of this thought that they need to prevent the grains from growing stale? Nothing happens by coincidence. Okay, they might have thought these things through. All right. There were also workmen quarters at hillsides. Bricks were never used at Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, and other sites. Hillside houses were made of stone at the base. Okay. You see, if you have traveled to mountainous areas in Uttarakhand and all those areas of the current day, you will see that the houses in the mountains, they are not made up of bricks, they are made up of stones. Similarly, during this era, the houses that were built in hilly areas, they were also made of stones, not made of bricks. And there were a variety of bricks, not just a single variety. There were a variety of bricks of sun-dyed brick, wedge-shaped bricks, okay, sawn bricks, curved bricks. Now, why would they feel the need to make so many different kinds of bricks? Did somebody come from outside and teach us all these things, or it was an indigenous knowledge after years and centuries of trial and error? Okay, this is where your sense of reason comes in. Which theory sounds more convincing to you? Okay. R.C. Majumdar also mentions in this book that 7 different layers have been recognized in the excavations at Mohenjo-daro. The antiquities in all these levels are homogeneous, the only point of difference being the deterioration of masonry in the later occupation of the cities. Okay. Imagine the time scale. I'm just appealing to your sense of reason, just to give you a brief idea or the picture. Okay, visualize the time scale. There were 7 different layers of cities discovered. Okay, imagine an onion. Okay, you're peeling one layer. There was one, civilization discovered. Then you again peel a layer. There was another civilization discovered. So how do you know how many centuries of time might have elapsed between those 2 layers? Okay, and now visualize there were 7 different layers of civilizations that have been discovered in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. So what might have been the elapsation of time between the 2 layers? So now you can get a clear idea. Imagine the amount of time that has gone into it. Imagine the level of trial and error that the population of those civilizations might have experienced for them to have been so good. Or you can simply conveniently and easily believe in the theory of the West that other races came over here and taught us those things. That's entirely upon you. Okay. Next is Lime and gypsum mortar, okay, they've also used these things. Occasionally bitumen was also used for waterproofing. Okay, how did they know the use of bitumen? Okay, suddenly somebody wakes up one day, discovers that, oh, this can also be used for waterproofing, let's start using it. Or what does the rational mind say? Somebody might have experimented with it, and then gradually, after centuries of trial and error, they might have realized that, oh, bitumen can also be used for waterproofing, and hence people living in those areas used it. Which sounds more convincing to you? Okay. Foundations were carried to considerable depths, and crude brick was used for infilling. Artificial mud platforms as a precaution against floods to which ancient Sindh was subject. So they interesting. They also knew the concept of foundation. Okay, in the current day, whenever you, if you have had the chance to go and explore the building, the construction of a building from scratch, you will see that they excavate the earth up to a considerable depth to establish its foundation. All right. Now, this science was known to the population of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Okay. Again, the same exercise. Do you think somebody woke up one day and realized, oh, we also need to dig a foundation? Or parallelly, their civilization, after centuries of trial and error, might have developed this idea of establishing a foundation. Which one sounds more convincing to your sense of reason? Okay. They've also been discovered. There were, foundations carried to considerable depths. Crude brick was used for infilling. Vertical alignment of buildings is marvelous, meaning the walls that they had built were immaculate. They were straight. They were perfectly straight. Not an inch of error in vertical alignment. Do you think this was by coincidence? Do you think this was out of the blue? Every house had a separate bathroom placed at the street side, paved with carefully laid burnt bricks which sloped to a corner containing the drain carrying of wastewater. Vertical drain pipes suggest that baths were constructed on the upper stories also. Okay, this we are talking about like thousands and thousands of years ago, when people in the West were shitting on the streets. Okay, so every house had a separate bathroom. Do you think this was coincidence? Okay. Do you think somebody would have woken up one day and realized, no, I don't want to go and use public washrooms. I want a washroom of my own, and hence it started, a trend. Hence it started a trend of constructing washrooms in houses, and then everyone started following that trend. Or parallelly, another story: somebody sat down and planned after the experience and collective wisdom of years of trial and error, and hence they constructed a separate bathroom in each and every household. Think about it. Placed at the street side, paved with carefully laid burnt bricks, which sloped to a corner containing the drain carrying of wastewater. Okay, they also designed drains carrying wastewater to specific locations. Okay, do you think this was by coincidence? Vertical drain pipes suggest that baths were constructed on the upper stories also. Interesting. Now, here it also mentions that all soak pits and drains were occasionally cleared by workmen, and drains were provided with manholes at intervals for cleaning. Somebody might have thought of it. Okay, that these drains might get choked with accumulation of waste, hence we need to provide manholes. Okay, this was carefully planned, carefully learned from the collective wisdom of years of trial and error. Okay, so this indicates that indeed there was a community of people or a class of people who worked as cleaners. Okay, next is the great structure near the stupa and with extra thick outer walls has been named the collegiate building, and probably you housed some high official, the high priest or a college of priests. Meaning, there are these ancient burial mounds that we call as stupas. Okay. Now, whenever a learned person died, they used to build a burial mound. They used to bury that person, and on top of that, they used to build a stupa, and they used to keep everything that belonged to him inside that stupa. All the literature that he or she, we don't know yet, all the literature he or she might have written, and for people to go over there and learn what that person had died preaching. All right. So stupa is not exactly of Buddhist origin. Okay. Stupa is of Vedic origin, or rather of an Aryan origin. Now you might have also, heard these Turkish baths, a certain variety of baths that has supposedly might have started or originated in Turkey. Okay. But you would be amazed to know that these sites of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro also had a site of Great Bath. Okay, in the southwest corner of the Great Bath is a hammam, or a hot air bath. Hammam is a type of a bath that is pretty much promoted and publicized by Turkey as something that originated in their land, and they market it as a way to elicit more tourists, elicit more footfall in their country. So they brand it as something that has originated over there. Okay, but thousands and thousands of years ago, in the cities of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, there was a great bath which had a hammam, meaning it had a hot air bath. This is mentioned on page number 176 of this book. Okay. It has a number of rectangular platforms of brick about 5 feet high, having a series of vertical chases sunk in their sides. There is another similar building at Mohenjo-daro which shows the Indus people understood the principle of hypocausic and had Turkish baths. So let me, leave it to your better judgment to judge where indeed these practices originate. The careful town planning, adequate water supply, and efficient drainage system presuppose an advanced state of civic authority. So in the current era that you see, these municipalities, municipal authorities that handle the local affairs. For example, if you live in a certain city, let's say you live in Mumbai. So there is a body called Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation, that is BMC. All right. So those are the people who handle local affairs, supply of water, overseeing the DISCOMs, that is Distribution Commission for Electricity and whatnot. Okay. So if Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, if these cities, if they had such immaculate town planning, if they had such perfect, water supply and efficient drainage system, you can safely assume there is high probability of them having a civic authority, meaning some sort of a body that was overlooking the efficient functioning of these bodies, because it cannot be that these bodies were functioning perfectly and on a turn by turn basis there were people who were overlooking these things. So there has to be some designated body. So if indeed there was some civic authority, how were the members of those civic authority chosen? Okay, if indeed they were chosen by a free and fair election, who's to deny the fact that there indeed existed some form of democracy in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa? We don't know these things. All right, there is no way for us to know these things, and it's not just for Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. All the ancient contemporary civilizations of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, there is no way for us to certainly determine what the claims in the West are, or what they're claiming them to be. Okay, so yes, this is again a chain of inquiry. We cannot certainly determine, for obvious reasons, because the proofs over there, the archaeological proofs over there have been totally destroyed, or they currently are in British Museum and whatnot. And the literary resources have been conveniently destroyed. The libraries have been burnt. Let's not get into that, otherwise, we might hurt some sentiments. Next up is social and economic life. How did the people in these cities live? Okay, there are also some pictures that are given in this book. Okay, if you refer to this book, you will have access to these pictures. But yeah, so now here they have started with an assumption that there were some tests, craniological tests were converted, and they think that the Proto-Australoid, the Mediterranean, the Mongoloid, and all these people who were living, that would indicate that it would have the city of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa will have a cosmopolitan character. Okay. Yeah, I'm not really convinced by these things. That is, again, I'm leaving to your better judgment. I'm not asking you to trust completely what I'm saying. All I'm doing is raising some questions to ignite that, that urge to do your own due diligence and come up with facts. All right. I am referring to this book. You can refer to any other book. Some of the native scholars. Do your own due diligence. Okay. Here, the large number or saddle cones found in the excavation indicates cultivation on an extensive scale. Okay. Now let me again bring you back to that cow theory or the cow economy. All right. Since they were now settled, the communities earlier, since they were traveling and going about as hunter gatherers, they had this, they will constantly keep on roaming. But now that they had stumbled upon this idea, oh, there is an animal called cow. We can domesticate that animal. Oh, this animal gives us dairy products. We can survive on those dairy products. So now that they had settled at one place, okay, now we cannot keep, they could not have, keep on consuming dairy products. Now, since they had leisure, okay, now they had time to indulge in these thoughts, okay, what more? Okay, because human mind inherently craves improvement, craves nourishment, craves, improvement in things, change in things. All right. So what would they have done? Logically, it is explicable that they would have come up with this idea of cultivation of crops such as rice and wheat. And we have already established that rice and wheat was already known to the people of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Okay, so there are excavations that indicate that these cultivations were done on an extensive scales, meaning on a commercial scale to feed the population. All right. Harappa cultivated peas and sesames. In addition, animal food was eaten, including beef, mutton, pork, poultry, and flesh of gharial, turtle, and tortoise, fresh river fish and dried fish from the sea, and also shellfish. Now, I'm not saying that the people who lived over there were completely plant-based, okay, because they were transitioning from a hunter-gatherer economy. So this is something that is hardwired in your brain that you are a carnivore. So such tendencies would not go away overnight. So now that they had settled, they had a cow economy, they had dairy products, they had cultivation of grains, but still they would consume animal food such as all these things. All right. Animals were both domesticated and wild. Horse was known to the Indus people. This is what R.C. Majumdar mentions on page number 177. Harappa knew of the domestic cat. Okay. Let's come to the type of clothes they wore. Okay. The lower garment resembled modern dhoti and was worn quite close to the body. Okay. The upper body was draped in a shawl and the lower body was again draped but in the form of a dhoti. Garments were of cotton. So the garments that they wore, they were made of cotton. So imagine the cotton, okay, in the current form that you get. What would they have done? They would just have glued those heaps of cotton together, hammered them into sheets of cloth, and then started wearing them? Or what is a better explanation for this? After centuries of trial and error, they might have, come up with a way to make clothes from cotton. Or you can simply or conveniently and easily believe in the theory that people came up from outside and taught us this science of making cloths. Okay, again, an appeal to your reason. Whichever reason sounds more reasoning to you, you can accept. Short locks were kept at the back, the shika, the small ponytail like structure that people keep. Some of it's a very dying practice these days, but there are still people who keep it in the current day. Kudos to you guys to keeping the culture alive. But yes, there was also short locks that were kept at the back. Men grew short beards or close cropped them along with upper lip, which was sometimes clean shaven. So did they know how to trim their beards thousands and thousands of years ago? If they didn't, how were they able to be clean shaven or close cropped? Again, an appeal to your reason. How is that possible? Think about it, ponder over it. Finger rings were plentiful and bangles and bracelets were commonly used. Materials for bangles and bracelets were gold, silver, copper, bronze, shell, and pottery. So there were also bangles and bracelets that were commonly used. Okay. So did somebody wake up one day and start, miraculously, there came a word from the Almighty, and the Almighty taught him that this is how you make bangles, and hence he started making bangles? Or there was a collective wisdom from centuries of trial and error, and hence over a period of time they might have perfected this art of bangle making. Okay, now bangle was made from gold, silver, copper, bronze. From where exactly did they get these things? Do you think these lands of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, they were rich in gold, copper, bronze, and all these things? Okay, so it's safe to assume that they got it from outside. How exactly did they reach it? There has to have been well-established logistic channels. So did they just establish those logistic channels overnight? Or there was centuries of trial and error, and hence after perfecting the ways of the logistics, such channels were put in place? Okay. Or maybe the convenient and easy explanation, somebody came from outside and built those logistical channels. Again, a pottery candlestick found in the ruins indicates candles, probably made of wax or tallow with wicks of cotton, played their part in illuminating the houses at Mohenjo-daro. Obviously, there was no electricity, so candles were used. Okay, so they knew how to make candles, or miraculously, somebody from the heavens above came downstairs, taught them this is how you make candles. Or again, a convenient and easy theory, somebody came from outside and taught us. Or okay, a more convincing explanation is collective wisdom, centuries of trial and error, and then hence they perfect that technique. Marbles, balls, and dice were used for games. Okay, die as in the die that we used for games such as Ludo and all that. A large number of die has also been discovered. So who's to say that the people of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa weren't exactly gamblers? Now these die, they were made of ivory, as in the elephant tooth. So how exactly did they make? Did elephants come over there and willfully comply with them and give them their tooth, and miraculously the die would be made? So you have to think there has to be a continuum of thought. Nobody came from outside and taught these people these things. The people who populated the areas of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa were indigenous inhabitants. Okay, in all probability the Aryans. The original Aryan home is Bharat. Okay. So specimens of toys are various. There were also toys. It thus appears that the ancients also used the same type of bullock cart as is found in modern Sindh, which was probably drawn by two animals yoked to a pole. Okay. Now the system of weights. Okay. Whenever you go to shop grocery, now that we have all these smart machines which weigh these things, but if you go to a street shop from where you can buy vegetables, they'll still use that conventional way where they have those stones of measured weights. Okay, so they would put it on one side, then this is how they will measure weights. So those weights have also been discovered from these sites of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Okay, so did they know the exact science of making these weights? So this, and the weight of the discovered things was exact 13.64 grams. So this indicates that they knew the system of decimals. So if they knew the system of decimals, did they know the number theory? They have to have, because you cannot know decimals without knowing the numbers. Okay, did they just miraculously know numbers? Or did they perfect this theory after years of trial and error, perfecting based on the collective wisdom of centuries? Which one sounds more convincing to you? Okay. So decimal system was known. Probably the decimal system originated independently in the Indus Valley. Yes, it did. It is mentioned in this book. Okay, thus the Mohenjo-daro and Harappa measures indicate that both foot and cubit system were current simultaneously in the Indus Valley. Okay, these things just don't happen out of the blue. Abundant specimens of weapons, tools, and implements have been discovered. Weapons of war or the chase were axes, spears, daggers, bows, arrows, maces, slings, perhaps catapults and swords made generally of copper and bronze. So you'll see weapons made of metals have been also discovered. Why exactly did they keep weapons? Okay, if they kept weapons, how did they produce it? Okay, if they were producing it, they must have known the science of producing weapons. If they know the science of producing weapons, how did they come to know it? Centuries of trial and error, accumulated wisdom, perfecting the art. This is how it was. Or you can conveniently choose to put your faith behind the theory of Aryan race coming from outside and, bringing all these, knowledge, bringing all this knowledge with them. Depends on you. The people of Mohenjo-daro maintained close contact with the outside world. The representation on a seal of a mastless ship with a central cabin and a steersman seated at the rudder indicates that the people of Indus Valley were acquainted with maritime vessels. They knew the art of navigation. Okay? So suddenly one day wakes up, decides to make a ship, goes out in the ocean, and hence starts the art of navigation? No, again, same theory. Years of exploration, many of them might have also died. We don't know what their contribution would have been to the knowledge of navigation. Okay, so there was a seal that has been discovered at this site that has a picture of a sailor, okay, on a seal of mastless ship on the central cabin and a steersman seated at the rudder. Okay, again, years of experimentation, years of trial and error, accumulated wisdom, and then perfecting the art. All right, or again, conveniently believe people came from outside and brought this knowledge with them. So yes, next is art and craft. Next section in this chapter is arts, crafts, and industries. The majority of the human figures are female and they are nude except for a narrow girdle around the loins. Animal figures are found in large numbers in poetry. They were fond of animals, the figurines. Okay. The Indus Valley pottery is heavy and utilitarian. But the pottery or the pots that were made, like I mentioned, they were utilitarian, meaning they would focus more on the utility of or the purpose of the object that they are making rather than going on the aesthetic side. Okay, so they might have been crude, but they serve the purpose. The Kagzi pottery that to this day exists in many areas of Rajasthan was prevalent in these things. Kagzi pottery is, you know, very thin. The thickness of that pottery will be very thin, and hence we call it as Kagzi. And it was pretty much evident. It's a very delicate art, delicate and sophisticated, and it existed in the era of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Again, years and years of practice. Pottery rattles are so substantially made that hardly a broken specimen is found. There is a wide variety in the types of toys cut. Okay, this speaks about the strength of the pottery that they made. The tiger with an open mouth and protruding tongue sometimes gazes at a tree on whose branches a man is perched. Okay. So there are also some figurines related to tiger. Curiously, do you think tigers are found in the current day areas of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa? If they are, and how exactly did they know about tigers? Tigers are found in the Sundarbans. There was a time when tigers were prevalent all across India. I'm not denying that. So yeah, something for you to think. So if it was prevalent all across India, there might have been some exchanges between, intra Bharat exchanges. Okay, there were obviously extra Bharat exchanges, meaning they were doing trade with civilizations outside the subcontinent, such as Mesopotamia and all that. But they were also trading with already existing civilizations within the subcontinent of Bharat. So again, an appeal to your reason. The attempts in some seals to replace the legend after cutting it indicate, okay, there were some amulets, something that they wore on their wrists. Okay, if you've read this book written by Amish Tripathi of, the Immortals of Meluha and all that series, the Shiva trilogy, in that he mentions, although it's a fiction thing, and there he mentions that the people, all right, if there is somebody who kills another person, that person will start wearing the amulet that the deceased person was wearing. Okay, so the evidences that have come also indicate that. There are also some precious stones that have been unearthed. Okay, lapis lazuli, turquoise, jadeite, and all these precious stones. But we don't find these precious stones in the areas of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. So how exactly did they get them? They might have been imported from some other place. Okay, maybe from Rajasthan and Kathiawar. Okay, so there might have been existing logistical channels. How do you import something? Okay, do a thought experiment. Come back to the contemporary era and imagine if there are two countries who need or who want to expand their economic connectedness. How can they do that? They can do that by increasing their economic give and take. How can you increase your economic give and take? By improving your logistical structures of exchange between both the countries. Okay, so if there was some import and export between these civilizations, there might have been well established logistical routes. So they did not come up overnight, obviously. Okay, the gold used in the Indus Valley appears to have come from the gold mines at Kolar. Kolar gold mines, they are situated in the Deccan Plateau of Bharat. And the sites of the civilizations of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, they are in current day Pakistan. So this is Deccan Plateau, this is Pakistan. So if the gold that was used in Indus Valley, is seen or appears to have been imported from here, how did they know about it? Somebody might have traveled over there. There might be some cultural exchanges. Okay, so if they were extracting, they were simply just gold was lying there on the streets, they would pick up the gold and take. So they must have known the science of extracting gold. Would they have invented the science of extracting gold overnight? Or centuries of trial and error, collective wisdom, perfecting the technique, which makes more sense? Or you can conveniently believe that people came from outside, brought that knowledge with them. Okay, Earrings were made of silver wire roughly bent around. Silver bracelets were made on core like gold bracelets. Copper and bronze are found side by side to the lowest levels at Mohenjo-daro. Copper may have come from Rajasthan, Balochistan, or Madras, as far as Madras. So this clearly indicates that there were well-established logistic channels. Okay. The comparative paucity of ivory objects may possibly be due to sanctity attached to elephants. The wild elephant, which is totally extinct in northwest Bharat at present, probably roamed in Sindh and Punjab in the 3rd millennium BC. Okay, there is some sort of sanctity that was attached to elephants. All right. Okay, again, this was an exercise, an appeal to your reason. There are some things in this series or in this video that you might find, preposterous on the face of it. But that is the whole point. Okay. That is the whole point that could nudge you in the direction of doing your own due diligence. Because right now what is happening is, whatever knowledge that comes out from the West, we take it at its face value. We do not analyze it critically. Whereas whatever that comes out of our country, they will analyze it critically. And I would say over critically sometimes. So we need to get out of this habit, a habit that has been pushed into us by years of subjugation from Islamic and Christian colonizers. We have stopped examining things critically, and that is what I intend to bring about through these series. Okay, that's all from this chapter. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching.